Okay, so let's see this particular question, and it's a parajumble. And here, a little bit understanding of the things actually matter. So, the very first sentence says that living things, animals, and plants typically exhibit correlational structure, right? So, let's understand that what is a correlational structure. So, it's kind of correlation structure means that living beings often co-occurs. Okay, I mean like some traits that are in common with living things. Okay, so maybe let's say animals have this sharp teeth, okay? So they often eat meat, okay? And plants with broad leaves, they often live in shady areas. So that's the case. So living things, be it animals and plants, they exhibit correlational structure, okay? So correlational structure means that the traits of features in living beings often co-occur in predictable way, okay? So that's the case that they say, all right? So let's see what is that, right? Now, adaptive behavior depends on cognitive economy treating objects as equivalent. Now, first of all, let's understand. I'm sure that you know what is adaptive behavior. So, adaptive behavior means behavior that actually helps organisms survive in the environment. Okay. So, the adaptive behavior depends on cognitive economy. Now, cognitive economy is, I'm sure you know that it's actually the brain's tendency. Okay. And what is a cognitive economy in specific is that it's the brain's tendency to simplify information by grouping or categorizing things instead of treating every object as entirely unique. Okay, so that's the case. So depends on cognitive economy treating objects as equivalent. Okay, so that's what they are saying, that adaptive behavior depends on cognitive economy treating objects as equivalent. Okay, so that means that the survival and you can say adaptation depend on our ability to economize mentally. Okay, that is to treat different but similar objects as if they are the same in the usual useful ways. Okay, so that's the case, right? कि हम उनको मतलब जो different है, okay, but similar objects है. Okay, I mean like I brown color chairs put together, green chairs put together. Okay, so as if they are same in useful way. So that's the case that it is talking about. Now, again, to categorize and the information we receive from our senses, from the world, okay, so we can see here that cognitive senses, okay, so the information we receive from our senses from the world typically has structure and order and is not arbitrary. Okay, so basically, they says that the world provides us kind of a structure, okay, and that is the order, okay, and it is not just it is just done arbitrary. Okay, it tells us that a sensory input is required, okay, to group things into meaningful categories, maybe, right? Now, to categorize an object means to consider it equivalent to other things in that category and different along some salient dimensions from things that are not. Okay, so what does it says is that to categorize means that this kind of it actually explains you what is a categorization. Okay, so it says that categorization means placing an object into a group, okay, by focusing on what makes it similar to others in the group, okay, and distinguish it from the things outside the group, right? So, for example, let's say that a cat is being treated as cats, okay, and the birds are being treated as birds. So that's the case. A slightly difficult para jumble, I would say, right? Now the sequence here is 2431 because, of course, the two is the opening sentence because it is giving us an kind of an introduction. Okay, so it is actually telling us that adaptive behavior depends on cognitive economy treating objects as equivalent. So कि हमारा adaptive behavior, okay, the way that we actually survive in the environment, so it actually depends upon cognitive economy. Okay, so they say that it depends on our ability to economize mentally, to categorize maybe mentally the things. Okay, so to treat different but similar objects as if they are the same in useful ways, right? Now that's the case. Now to after that we can see that fourth will come because it is kind of telling us that why we treat objects as equivalent. So to categorize an object means to consider. So this defines categorization. Okay, so that's the case. And then the information we receive from our senses typically has structure. Okay, so it tells us why categorization works. Okay, so इसमें आपको देखो, two आपको कर रहा है introduces to the main idea that adaptive behavior actually depends on cognitive economy. Okay, four tells us what is basically the cognitive economy. Okay, so that is to categorize in us. So we can take the hint here कि cognitive economy is treating objects as equivalent. So to categorize an object, and we can get the echo words or object. Okay, so it tells us what is the cognitive economy. Okay, and the third actually kinds of justify that why the categorization works. Okay, so it says that the information we receive from our senses from the world typically has structure and order as not arbitrary. Okay, and last may we're gonna put first that living things, animals and plants typically exhibit correlational structure. So it's kind of give us an example to illustrate the principle of it, right? So it suggests kind of, you can say that it gives on a, I would say, a domain specific example. Okay, so it shows that a kind of structured correlation patterns which is being mentioned in three, so from the world typically has structured and order and is not arbitrary. So living things, animals and plants typically exhibit correlational structure. Okay, so that's the case, that the 2431, but again a very difficult para summary to be cracked in case if you don't know and understand this thing, right? So I hope you're able to get it in a better manner.